Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever had someone say hello to you in a way that stopped you in your tracks, not because of what they said, but because of how it felt? That wasn't just a greeting, that was psychology in action. In the first 5 seconds, they weren't just saying hi, they were testing your energy, sparking emotion, and creating connection. And the wild part? Most of us miss it completely. What if that weird hello wasn't weird at all, but a sign of something deeper? Stay with me, because once you understand why they do it, you'll never hear hello the same way again. When someone greets you in a way that catches you off guard, something powerful happens in the brain. We're wired to notice deviations from the norm. Most people walk through life in predictable loops. Hey, hi, how are you? All routine, all forgettable. But when that opening line breaks from the expected pattern, it snaps us into the present moment. It's like a tap on the shoulder in a crowded room. Suddenly, you're not just hearing words, you're paying attention. This kind of disruption in patterns sparks curiosity. Why this approach? What does it mean? The brain begins to search for context, and that search creates a moment of engagement that wouldn't exist otherwise. Every interaction starts with a first impression, and that impression is usually formed within seconds. So when someone leads with an unconventional greeting, they're immediately setting themselves apart. They're saying without words, I'm not like the rest. This isn't about being loud or performative, it's about being intentional. Most people blend into the background, not because they lack something special, but because they present themselves the same way everyone else does. So when someone interrupts that cycle, they immediately elevate their presence. It's a subtle form of personal branding in action. You don't have to scream to stand out. You just have to be different in a meaningful way. Disruption isn't about chaos, it's about focus. Think about how many interactions you have in a day that pass without impact. Dozens of exchanges that leave no impression. But then someone walks up and says something unexpected, not in a rehearsed way, but with genuine energy. In that moment, you're pulled out of your internal dialogue. You're not thinking about your to-do list or replaying an earlier conversation. You're there, present. And presence is the rarest currency in today's distracted world. We long for people who pull us into the moment. That small interruption becomes a bridge between the mundane and the memorable. It's worth noting that most people are terrified of standing out. We're conditioned to blend in, to play it safe, to say what's expected. But safe doesn't build attraction. Safe doesn't spark excitement. What actually pulls someone in is the unexpected, the moment that breaks the script, that hello that makes you pause and smile, that shift from auto-response to real engagement. It opens the door to something deeper, because if someone can surprise you with just a greeting, what else might they bring into your world? That single moment is a spark, and if met with openness, it can ignite connection. The mind craves novelty. It's why we remember moments that made us laugh, surprised us, or challenged our expectations. A creative opening line doesn't need to be clever, it just needs to feel real. When it does, it becomes a mental bookmark in someone's memory. This is where attraction often begins, not with physical traits or accomplishments, but with how someone makes you feel in a single interaction. So while most people are trying to impress through information, the real key is to disrupt through emotion. Emotion sticks, and a bold hello is often the first emoji. Iron beat in what could be a much larger story. In this way, connection isn't always built through logic, it's built through interruption. That initial jolt creates a space for something new to unfold. It's like a small window opens and says, pay attention. And if you're receptive, you feel it, you respond, you engage. That shared moment of surprise or amusement is the seed of chemistry. And the truth is, chemistry rarely happens in perfect silence or monotone exchanges. It happens when two energies collide in an unexpected way. That collision often begins with the decision to show up differently, to offer something no one else has. Being memorable is not the same as being dramatic. You don't need to be over the top. What matters is intention. That intentional choice to start the conversation from a different emotional place, a place of warmth, humor, mischief, or charm, changes the entire tone. It gives the other person permission to relax, to step out of their own mask. This is how vulnerability begins, not with oversharing, but with emotional signals that say, it's okay to be real here. That's the magic of an unusual hello. It creates a space for authenticity in a world filled with surface-level exchanges. If we really look at the psychology here, what's being created is not just a greeting, it's an emotional shift, and shifts are powerful. They jolt people out of monotony. They create little gaps in routine where new things can enter. That moment is often the only opportunity we get. So why waste it on the expected? Why not turn it into an experience? We're all looking for something that feels alive. And aliveness doesn't live in the comfort zone. It lives in the moments we risk just enough to be noticed, not for attention, but for real connection. The beauty of this approach is its simplicity. You don't need a script, you don't need the perfect line, you just need to bring a bit more intention, a bit more boldness, and a willingness to interrupt the script of everyday life. That willingness is rare and therefore magnetic. Most people are too afraid to try something different. So when you do, you're not just offering words, you're offering an experience. And experiences are what people remember. Even if it doesn't lead to anything more, you've planted a feeling, and that feeling lingers longer than you might think. So the next time someone greets you in a way that's out of the ordinary, pay attention. Not just to what they said, but to how you felt. That feeling is data. It tells you something is happening, even if you don't fully understand it yet. And in a world that moves so fast, we need more of those moments. Moments that break the rhythm, wake us up, and bring us face to face with something unexpected. Because that's where the real stories begin, not with perfection, but with the courage to start differently. Confidence doesn't announce itself with loud voices or grand gestures. It shows up in the smallest moments, often without saying much at all. When someone uses a greeting that's different from the norm, it's a quiet but powerful signal. They're saying, "I trust myself," without needing to explain it. That trust is magnetic. It's not about arrogance or trying to impress. It's a deeper comfort with who they are. They're not asking for validation, they're offering a vibe. A confident person isn't looking to be liked, they're looking to be known. And it all starts with how they enter the conversation. Most people hide behind safe words and predictable behavior. They choose what's familiar, not because it's effective, but because it feels low risk. But in playing it safe, they blend into the background. The person who greets you differently has made a different choice. They've accepted the risk of not being understood, and that takes guts. Real confidence is about showing who you are before someone else gives you permission. And when someone leads with something unique, that's exactly what they're doing. It's not for attention, it's for alignment. They're signaling, "This is my energy, can you meet me here?" True confidence is quiet. It doesn't need applause, and it certainly doesn't need everyone's approval. That's why it often appears in ways we don't expect, like in the decision to say something a little quirky, a little playful, maybe even a little strange. What makes that moment bold is not the words themselves, but the lack of self-doubt behind them. You can feel when someone is secure in their presence. It makes you stop and wonder what it would feel like to be that sure of yourself. That kind of confidence can't be faked because it lives in body language, tone, and energy. People often confuse confidence with perfection, but real confidence is rooted in authenticity, not flawlessness. When someone chooses a greeting that's offbeat, they're making a bet on themselves. They're saying, "Even if this doesn't land, I'm okay." That emotional stability is rare. Most people crave reassurance at every turn, constantly scanning for approval. But when someone starts strong with something unusual, they're not fishing for compliments. They're inviting you into a moment. It's not performative, it's personal. That kind of presence doesn't need a spotlight. It creates one. In a world obsessed with image, the truly confident person doesn't try to impress. They try to connect. And connection starts with authenticity. An unusual hello is often the first clue you're dealing with someone who values experience over approval. They don't lead with what they think you want to hear. They lead with who they actually are. That takes courage. It also takes emotional maturity, because when you know your worth, you stop chasing reactions. You begin choosing alignment, and that shift, though subtle, is everything in human dynamics. You can't fake groundedness. People feel it when it's real. When someone opens a conversation in a way that's completely their own, you can tell they're not trying to sell themselves. They're just being themselves. And that kind of presence calms the space. It doesn't try to dominate, it invites. It says, this is me, and you're free to respond however you want. That level of self-trust creates safety. It gives you permission to drop your guard too. And once both people stop performing, real chemistry becomes possible. One of the most attractive qualities a person can have is emotional risk tolerance. The ability to put yourself out there without guarantees is a superpower. And an unusual greeting is often a low-stakes way of showing that you're willing to take that leap. It's not about being clever. It's about being honest in a way that might not fit the norm. That honesty signals something deeper, a lack of fear around rejection, because the confident person doesn't view rejection as failure. They view it as redirection. That shift in mindset is what sets them apart from the rest. There's a certain quiet power in not over-explaining yourself. When someone says something a little out of the box and lets it land without rushing to clarify, that's confidence in action. It means they're okay with a moment of uncertainty. They don't need immediate approval to feel validated. That self-containment is rare. Most people overcompensate when they feel insecure, but the confident person leans into stillness. They don't need to fill every silence or defend every word. That grounded energy gives others space to be curious instead of critical, and that curiosity creates connection. When you're around someone who's genuinely confident, you feel different. It's not that they steal the spotlight, it's that they shift the room. That energy is contagious. A unique greeting may seem like a small gesture, but it's often the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it lies a mindset that isn't afraid of being misunderstood. That mindset is incredibly freeing for both people involved. It says we don't have to do this the way everyone else does. And that freedom is where intimacy begins. It's not about being the most interesting person in the room, it's about being the most real. Ultimately, confidence is not about making bold statements, it's about making honest ones. And honesty often looks like playfulness, curiosity, or even vulnerability. When someone chooses a greeting that breaks the mold, they're leading with something real. It might be awkward, it might even be misunderstood, but it's theirs. And that ownership is what makes it powerful. Because in a world full of people trying to say the right thing, the most magnetic person is the one who dares to say something true, even if it's just a simple, unusual hello. We rarely remember the exact words people use when they greet us. What we do remember is how they made us feel in that first instant. A hello isn't just a word, it's an emotional delivery. The energy behind it carries more weight than the syllables themselves. When someone says something unexpected or says it in a way that feels alive, it stirs something in us. It catches our attention not because it's clever, but because it's emotionally charged. That emotional tone becomes the first impression. People are drawn to warmth, playfulness, and presence far more than to perfectly chosen words. The unusual part of a hello is only powerful if it carries the right energy. Think about the way tone, expression, and delivery can completely change a simple phrase. A dry, routine greeting can feel like background noise, but the same words spoken with excitement or wit suddenly become magnetic. This is where emotional intelligence enters the room. The person who leads with a different kind of hello isn't just trying to be funny or odd, they're trying to connect. They're using energy to make you feel something, and that feeling becomes the start of rapport. Words may be the vehicle, but emotion is the engine. And in social connection, the engine matters far more than the vehicle. We respond to emotion before we respond to content. That's why children, animals, and even strangers on the street will react to tone before they understand the words. When someone greets you in an unconventional way, it's not the phrase itself that matters, it's the emotional intention behind it. Are they bringing lightness, humor, intrigue? That emotional signature speaks directly to your instincts. It tells your nervous system whether to lean in or back away. And when someone makes you feel safe, amused, or surprised in a positive way, it creates an opening. That's often the start of real connection, an emotional permission slip to be more present. Authenticity amplifies emotion. A unique hello only works if it feels real. If someone's trying too hard or mimicking someone else, the energy doesn't land. But when the greeting comes from a genuine place, from someone comfortable in their skin, it resonates. You can feel the difference. It's not about performance, it's about presence. And presence is rare. Most people are distracted, rehearsed, or emotionally guarded. But when someone shows up fully, even just for a moment, it cuts through the noise. The unusual greeting becomes a signpost. Something different is happening here. That difference draws attention not to the words, but to the moment itself. Emotional impact lives in contrast. We remember moments that broke the pattern, that introduced a shift. So when someone greets us in a way that feels fresh, it stands out against the backdrop of all the neutral interactions that came before. Our brains are wired to remember change. That's why the unusual hello lingers even hours or days later. It wasn't just what T was said, it was the sudden emotional switch it introduced. And those switches are powerful. They become emotional anchors in our memory, tied to the person who caused the shift. This is why energy, more than language, builds attraction and interest. We all crave emotional stimulation, not chaos but movement, something that shakes us out of mental autopilot. An unusual hello has the ability to do that in a subtle way. It interrupts the expected rhythm of interaction and inserts a moment of play or intrigue. That playful disruption isn't just fun, it's strategic. It shows emotional creativity. It demonstrates that someone is engaging with you, not just speaking at you. That distinction matters because the most memorable people aren't necessarily the smartest or most attractive. They're the ones who made us feel something new. That emotional novelty creates a sense of connection. People tend to mirror energy. If someone approaches with flat, disinterested energy, we respond in kind. But if someone opens with a burst of warmth or humor, it pulls something different out of us. We match what we receive. So a unique hello, when delivered with playful or sincere energy, invites a mirrored response. That mutual engagement creates chemistry. It's like striking a tuning fork. The vibration continues beyond the moment itself. And in that resonance, something authentic begins to form. Not just communication, but connection. Not just attention, but shared emotion. Emotion makes moments stick. We forget faces, names, facts, but we remember how we felt. The person who greets you with charm, mischief, or heart doesn't need to say anything extraordinary. Their emotional presence carries the weight. It shows attentiveness. It says, "I'm here and I see you." That level of emotional awareness is often felt within seconds. It bypasses logic and speaks directly to intuition. And when someone connects with you on that intuitive level, even briefly, it changes how you see them. You stop viewing them as a stranger. They've entered your emotional radar, and that's why. Here real interest begins. Vulnerability plays a quiet role here. It takes courage to infuse a greeting with energy that's different from the norm. There's always a risk of it not landing, of being misunderstood. But emotional risk is part of emotional intimacy. When someone is willing to go there, even in a small way, it builds trust. It shows that they're willing to lead the interaction with feeling, not just form. And that leadership invites reciprocity. When one person takes an emotional risk, it encourages the other to step forward too. That's how connection deepens, not all at once, but in these small, brave moments. At the end of the day, connection lives in emotion, not perfection. The most unforgettable conversations often begin with a spark, something small, spontaneous, and real. A greeting that's different, energized, or even a little awkward can be that spark. Not because of what was said, but because of what was felt. And the feeling is what people come back for. They may not remember the exact words used in the hello, but they'll remember that you made them feel awake, alive, or seen. And in a world full of surface-level interactions, that emotional depth is the true currency of connection. When someone greets you with something unusual or unexpected, it's not always just for fun. It's often a form of emotional testing. They're reading your reaction as closely as you're hearing their words. The way you respond gives them valuable insight into who you are and what kind of energy you carry. A light-hearted, quirky hello might seem random, but it's a subtle way to gauge your openness. Are you playful? Are you guarded? Do you laugh, engage, freeze, or deflect? All of those reactions speak volumes before a real conversation even begins. This moment of spontaneous interaction becomes a mirror. People aren't just listening to how you reply, they're observing the feeling behind your response. This approach is not about manipulation, it's about resonance. We are all in some way filtering for the kind of people we connect with most deeply. A unique greeting is a shortcut to see if there's a match. Instead of waiting through layers of small talk, this method cuts to the emotional tone immediately. Can you play? Can you adapt? Can you handle a little spontaneity? If the answer is yes, the door to deeper interaction opens. If the answer is no, it doesn't mean you're incompatible. It just means the energy isn't aligned in that moment. This kind of testing happens unconsciously all the time. We just rarely label it as such. The beauty of emotional testing is that it's mutual. While one person might be testing the waters with their greeting, the other is doing the same in how they respond. You're both reading subtle cues: tone, timing, confidence, vulnerability. These cues help determine whether to invest more emotionally or hold back. This isn't about being strategic in a cold way. It's about protecting emotional energy. The way you react to someone's opening can be an invitation or a boundary, and how they interpret that response influences the next move. We are all constantly asking the same silent question: is this a safe space to be more of myself? First impressions are more emotional than logical. That means your response to someone's bold or odd hello isn't just about manners, it's a reflection of your emotional availability. If you shut it down or ignore it, it may signal defensiveness or disinterest, even if that wasn't your intent. If you match it or play with it, it shows curiosity and openness. People are drawn to those who respond with warmth and flexibility because it indicates ease within. A spontaneous moment invites you into emotional presence. Whether you accept the invitation or not sends a signal back, and signals are what shape connection. This form of testing isn't always conscious. Sometimes it's just instinct. A person who greets differently may not even realize they're filtering. They're simply being themselves, but they've learned either through experience or intuition that certain people respond to certain energies. They know that how someone handles surprise or light teasing can reveal emotional intelligence. It's not about passing or failing a test. It's about feeling seen and responded to in a way that feels natural. When someone picks up that you can meet them in that energy, it builds trust, not because of what was said, but because of how you danced in the moment. There's also something deeper happening, an invitation into play. When someone says something unusual at the beginning of an interaction, they're creating a low-stakes opportunity to step out of structure and into spontaneity. If you meet them there, it becomes a small, shared risk. And shared risk is a building block for connection. It shows that both people are willing to drop the mask, even just for a few seconds. This tiny moment of emotional alignment tells you more about compatibility than 5 minutes of scripted conversation. It's efficient, authentic, and often unspoken. Many people fear being misunderstood when they express themselves differently. So when someone opens with a playful or unconventional hello, there's always vulnerability underneath. They're offering you a version of themselves that isn't polished or pre-approved. How you handle that offering matters. It signals whether you're safe to be real with. A warm, curious response becomes a kind of emotional green light. It tells the other person that their real self doesn't need to be hidden. This kind of subtle feedback loop is the foundation of emotional intimacy. It starts in the smallest of ways and grows from there. Testing isn't about judging character, it's about sensing energy. It's about detecting alignment without needing to overanalyze. One person says something offbeat, the other person laughs and goes with it. Suddenly the space between them gets smaller. Neither of them planned it, but now there's a thread connecting them. That thread is made of shared perception. It's what happens when two people recognize that they're speaking the same emotional language, even if they've just met. This is why some connections feel instant. Not because of fate or magic, but because the emotional testing was passed in a single moment. A greeting may seem simple, but it carries intention. For someone who values depth, humor, spontaneity, or warmth, their opening line is crafted to reflect that. They're not testing to exclude, they're testing to find. To find someone who will play, who will feel, who will respond. That's why the content of the greeting isn't as important as the vibe of the response. A meaningful reaction shows not only interest but also compatibility. It's emotional chemistry disguised as banter. It doesn't need to be deep to be real. It just needs to be honest. And honesty, even in tiny doses, is what unlocks trust. Ultimately, we're all trying to answer one question: can I be myself with you? An unusual hello is often the first attempt to asking that question, not through words, but through feeling. If the answer is yes, the interaction deepens. If the answer is no, people move on, usually without even realizing why. This early emotional scan is subtle, fast, and incredibly telling. It's not about games or strategies, it's about seeking resonance. And the way we greet each other when done with real energy becomes the first clue to whether that resonance exists. That's not just communication, that's connection.